Good evening, Purple family. Welcome to another episode of Shades of Purple, a Prince podcast. Tonight, I will be discussing Prince's racial identity. And when I say racial identity, I really mean how Prince's image, music, and business practices avoided, embraced, and transcended race and racial issues. We all know that Prince was black, so working off of that premise, we'll see how race played a role in the ways in which Prince chose to ignore or deconstruct racial ideology, the ways in which he embraced his race and blackness, and the ways in which Prince was able to transcend or go beyond race and to be seen by the culture and the public to be more than just a black artist. In other words, how his music and persona were not defined or limited to his race. He was seen as just Prince and not Prince, a black man. Now, before we get into it, I think the main reason why a lot of people thought that Prince was something other than black or that he was possibly mixed was because of the movie Purple Rain. Now, in the movie Purple Rain, his mother is portrayed by a white actress. And so people assume that Prince must be biracial. But that's actually not the case. He is not biracial. Both of his parents are also black. They're from Louisiana. Now, they are fair-skinned as well, like him, but they are both black. And I can't really tell you why Prince chose to have a white mother. And he would also say in interviews that his mother was Italian. The only thing I can really think of is he just wanted to add to that mystique about him. He really, especially during this time, he really wanted people to focus more so on his music and not him. That's kind of hard to do because his music went with him. Music and the person or the man, they go hand in hand. But for Prince, he really didn't want people to focus on who he was as a person because he wanted people to hear the music because that's who he was. His music pretty much encapsulated who he was, as a man. So he wanted people to focus on that. And so he would sometimes just make up stories. In another book that I read, Neil Carlin, I think his name is, who was a journalist who did an interview with Prince in 1985, and they went on to become good friends. He basically said throughout the book that Prince created this character and his name was also Prince. And the Prince character was the one who had the white mother and who didn't have a good relationship with his father and all this, that, and the third. So that book was very, very interesting. And eventually I want to do a book review on it. But so according to Neil, Prince was just playing this character. But I also read that the initial script, now we all know that Vanity was supposed to be in the movie Purple Rain initially. But she fell out with Prince because they broke up and also because he wasn't going to pay her the amount that she wanted. Supposedly, Vanity wanted like $1 million or something like that. And Prince was like, no, I'm not going to pay you that. And of course, they broke up romantically as well. And so, of course, and then they brought in Apollonia later. But so supposedly the script, it was called Dreams at first before it became Purple Rain. And supposedly Vanity was helping Prince write it. And it was supposed to really be about her family. Now, she has a black father and a white mother. So she is biracial. And supposedly her father was very abusive, just like the father in Purple Rain. And he would, slap her around and, just be physically abusive toward her, supposedly. And so the thinking is that Prince and Vanity working the script together may have, used her family as a representation of the family in Purple Rain. And so that's not necessarily Prince's family. And Prince has even said that his father was never violent, that he didn't own a gun. And so that, that his father was a total opposite of the character played by Clarence Thomas, Francis L. So I don't know. You can pick and choose what you believe, but Prince liked to have that mystique about him. He didn't want people to know who he really was. And so it's really hard to gauge what's true and what's not. But anyway, moving on from that, but I just wanted to, put that out there because a lot of people, to this day believe that he was a biracial man, and he was not. He was black, and he was a very proud black man at that, as we will see later on. Okay, so let's get right into it. Let's look at the ways in which Prince chose to ignore, avoid, or deconstruct his racial identity in his image, music, and business practices. So I really had a really good source for this in this book called I Wonder You by Adilifu Nama. He examines how Prince's image and music revealed how Prince understood the racial politics of the music industry during his lifetime. The purpose of the book was to discover the ways in which, quote, and I'm quoting here, Prince challenged and periodically subverted established racial notions on how popular blackness was imagined, promoted, and circulated in U.S. society by combining image and sound, style and substance, politics, and pleasure with blatant self-promotion. So, you guys, this book pretty much read like a thesis statement. Like, it read like a research paper. But it was interesting because the examples that he used, you could really see how race was kind of intermixed in with that. So, he mainly focused on what role race played in Prince's music and image. He called Prince a racial shapeshifter because Prince was able to be a black man or a black artist without being presented to the masses as a black man or a black artist. This was a strategic move on Prince's part because from the beginning of his career, he was adamant about not being promoted or seen as just a black artist. While recording his first album, For You, he told Warner Brothers executive Lenny Waronker to "Don't make me black," quote, "Don't make me black." He clarified this statement by adding that his idols were all over the place. Many people outside of the Prince family may not know this, but one of Prince's major influences was a Canadian singer-songwriter named Joni Mitchell. Prince loved Joni Mitchell. He covered her song A Case of You on several occasions, and he loved her 1975 album, The Hissing of Summer Lawns, describing it as one of the best albums he had ever heard. He also stated in his first televised interview in 1985 with MTV that he grew up in a black and white world, meaning that his musical influences were varied. So he would listen to James Brown, and then he would listen to Sly and the Family Stone and white acts like Fleetwood Mac and Joni Mitchell. Because Minneapolis was not what we would call a chocolate city like Detroit, meaning that the black population was kind of more of a predominant than the white population. In Minneapolis and in the state of Minnesota, I mean, it was like 98% white. And I think it still is to this day. Well, it might be maybe more blacks up there now. But back during the 70s and 80s, it was like 98% white. There was only like one black radio station when Prince was growing up. And most of the time, the new music was a few months old by the time it reached that one black radio station in Minneapolis. Tyka said that her and Prince were only able to keep up with the new black music by black artists was because their older brother would bring back 45s from out of town. And so she didn't specify what older brother, but I'm thinking maybe Alfred, but I'm not sure. So Prince did not want to be marketed as a black artist because he knew that his music was just going to be more than just straight R&B, which at this time was viewed as more of a black music genre. He may have also known, because he did take a music business class when he was in high school, that on the business side of the music industry, black artists are marketed one way and white artists are marketed another. And that's still the case to this day. And more often than not, the white artists tend to get more airplay, better budgets, because the white audience is larger and they're going to be willing to spend money, period, to see their favorite rock star perform on stage. So what became critically important to Prince early on was to figure out ways to racially cross over so that he could appeal to white audiences. And not because he was trying to sell out or not because he wasn't interested in keeping up with his black fan base. It wasn't that. He really understood the importance of attracting all races, not just catering to black folk, And some people want to, like I said, call him a sellout, but that's not what he was doing. So he really wanted to be appealing to all people, because his music, Prince's music, you cannot put it into one genre. You just can't. And because of that, he wanted to really just expand, his music so he could get a bigger budget and have more airplay for his music. So he, like I said, he wasn't not trying to be seen as a black artist because he was ashamed of his race. Not at all. That wasn't the case. He just wanted to be able to have his music to have no race appeal, meaning that he wanted his fans to be black and white, not just one or the other. We can also see this in his songs, especially during the Dirty Mind and controversy era. On Uptown, which is on Dirty Mind, he sings black, white, Puerto Rican, everybody just a freaking, and it's falsetto. Yeah, I know I can't sing, y'all. I'm sorry. And then he said, where I come from, we don't let society tell us what we're supposed to do or tell us what we're supposed to be. Our clothes, our hair, we don't care. It's all about being there. So he was promoting desegregation and that it was just all about different people having fun, not worrying about what society accepted or rejected. Instead, the focus is on everyone having a good time, regardless of your background. And Uptown was a place where everybody could come and just let their hair down, have a good time. You can be black, white, Puerto Rican, everybody's just mixing and mingling and having a good time. On the song Controversy from the album of the same name, Prince says at the end of the song, people call me rude. I wish we all were nude. I wish there were no black and white. I wish there were no rules. So once again, we see in Prince's music and lyrics, he had a desire to be in a world that did not see race or color, that we could all just be one human race of people. And of course, that is, the ideal. But of course, that is not the reality. Never been the reality and probably will, never be, the reality. Unfortunately, that's just not, we live in a black and white world, unfortunately. So going back to the music scene in Minneapolis. So black bands, if they wanted to be successful, really had to have at least one white band member, if not a few. And this has been a staple of the Minneapolis music scene for some time. So Nama, in the book I Wonder You, he found a mini book called Purple Snow that was actually a 2-disc set of music with liner notes about Minneapolis black bands between the years 1972 and 1982. And a recurring theme that Nama noticed was that all the black bands had at least one white member. And that was needed for the black band to be accepted enough around the city to get paying gigs. So now it's more understandable, why Prince decided to have white band members in his band and why he wanted a mixture of both races is because that was the norm for the Minneapolis music scene. And he knew that if he wanted to cross that racial divide, he and his band had to look the part. Now, of course, black and white bands were not a new thing because, you have Sly and the Family Stone and KC and the Sunshine Band. So multiracial band, you could actually say, was well known and established method for artists who were not trying to be pigeonholed into one particular genre. They wanted to play an R&B. They wanted to play funk. They wanted to play rock and roll. They didn't want to just play just one genre, and bringing people of different backgrounds and different races will allow you to play multiple genres like that. And so that's what Prince had in mind. And he talked about the fact that not everybody thought that it was a good idea for Prince to have a multiracial band. He told Rolling Stone that he had reasons for wanting a multiracial band. And he said, there were a lot of pressure from my ex-buddies and other bands not to have white members in the band. But I always wanted a band that was black and white. Half the musicians I know only listen to one type of music, and that wasn't good enough for me. So once again, his own words, he wanted versatility. He did not want to just play one genre of music. He wanted to be able to play rock and roll, funk, jazz, R&B, whatever. He didn't want to just stick to one or two genres of music. So he wanted musicians that would not just play, like I said, R&B or just rock. So he wanted well-rounded musicians that listened to different types of music. So in turn, that could allow Prince to experiment with his sound. Nama also said that in the way Prince dressed And he called it cross-dressing in his book, but I disagree with that, because cross-dressing is like when a man wears a dress. At least that's my definition of cross-dressing. I don't know if that's the actual definition, but that's my definition. So, but basically he discussed how Prince dressed in his video for I Want to Be Your Lover, which I did talk about in episode 3, how he dressed very feminine. But now we see Prince may have had another reason for dressing like this. He may have decided that this was a way that he could not be typecast just as an R&B artist. Now, Nama seemed to think that Prince was going through this, as he called it, quote, stylistic rigmarole, because he wanted to appeal to white rock audiences. So he may have taken some inspiration from people like Mick Jagger or David Bowie, especially with some of his dancing and mannerisms on stage during the Prince era. In particular, they were very reminiscent of Mick Jagger. You know, the way he would do this little, the little crazy like walk or whatever, kind of like, like with his butt out, like sticking his butt up and just kind of walking kind of crazy. Like, Prince did kind of different variations of that on stage. Very reminiscent of Mick Jagger, who himself also had a very androgynous look about him. David Bowie as well. So Prince was determined to not allow his race to dictate the course of his career. This is evident once again early on in his career by the choices of the TV shows Prince chose to go on to promote his music. Now, Prince's very first television appearance was on the show American Bandstand, hosted by Dick Clark. Now, we of course know about the now infamous way that Prince acted with Dick Clark. When Clark came over to interview him and the band, he held up fingers instead of answering Dick Clark's questions about how long he had been playing, and he just acted really weird because he wanted to keep that air of mystery about him. He really wanted his music to speak for him. So all he wanted to do was perform. You can see it all over his face, like, please just let me go over. So let this be over with so I can just go back to performing. That's how he looked. Like, he looked annoyed. He looked like, he just didn't want to, be there. He probably felt put on the spot, even though he knew that Dick was going to be doing this. And supposedly backstage before all this, right after they met Dick Clark in the green room, according to Des Dickerson in his book, he said that Prince told them, look, I'm going to do the talking, but I don't want y'all to say anything. And so Des remembers being kind of disappointed by that because, he wanted to, say something, but Prince was like, no, don't say anything. Had to take a drink. So that's why so he told the band don't say anything, and that he was just going to just act the way he wanted to. And at the time, it was really weird because, like I said, he wanted to keep that mystery about him. He wanted the music to speak for itself. And so after that, he wasn't keen on giving many interviews at that time because, like I said, he wanted the focus to be solely on his music and not him. But the fact that Prince or his management chose to go on a show like American Bandstand as his first television appearance is telling, because American Bandstand was a standard music show that if you wanted to be noticed to a nationwide audience, that's where you would go. American Bandstand catered to the mainstream pop culture of the time. And of course, when I say mainstream, I mean white. So Prince was setting himself up to be seen by as many white adoring fans as possible. He would also appear on the Midnight Special and Saturday Night Live. Now, all of those shows cater to a largely white audience. So it's telling that he would be able to even get on Saturday Night Live during this time, because Saturday Night Live would only have maybe one black cast member at a time for more than one season. So Saturday Night Live was most definitely catering to the white audience, as was MTV, which first hit the airwaves in 1981. Now, it's well known that when MTV first came out, it was very discriminatory against black artists and black music because, once again, MTV was catering to a white audience, in particular a white rock audience. So basically, MTV was setting themselves up to be the television version of the mainstream radio. The problem was that not a lot of white American rock bands hadn't made music videos yet. So a lot of what you would see on early MTV was the British rock bands over in the UK, across the pond, as they say. So when MTV first aired, you would see videos from UK bands like Human League, ABC, Duran Duran, Soft Cell, and Culture Club. So how would black artists find a way to break the Jim Crow programming that MTV set up? Well, here comes Michael Jackson. So for Michael Jackson, it was a combination of strong arming by CBS, his record label at the time. They threatened to boycott MTV. And it also took the fact that Michael Jackson's album Thriller and his singles were doing really great numbers. Singles like Billie Jean and Beat It debuted at number 1. So MJ was very popular at this time, and that's just, putting it lightly. So MTV really had no choice when it came to Michael Jackson. So similarly, as soon as Michael Jackson's videos started airing on MTV, he crossed over into becoming a pop artist as opposed to an R&B artist. Now, Michael Jackson also, like Prince, had found ways to cultivate a multiracial image. He hired white musicians as well. For Beat It, Eddie Van Halen very famously did the guitar solo for that song. He also had a duet with Beatle Paul McCartney on Thriller with the song The Girl Is Mine. So Michael Jackson also saw the necessity of creating a neutral race image. So for Prince, the music videos for 1999 and Little Red Corvette, which premiered on MTV, because like Beat It and Thriller, it had a certain appeal to white audiences and that it featured white musicians. Now in the video, Now in the video for 1999, we see Jill Jones and Lisa Coleman as standouts. Now in the book, I Wonder You, the author, Nama, thought that Jill Jones was white when she actually is half white, but he went on to explain why he believed that the video was strategically made to cater to the white audience. So in the beginning of the video, and actually throughout, you see blonde Jill Jones and brunette Lisa Coleman playing the keyboard. So the visual is two white women singing and being more of the center of attention than Prince. Now in the video for Little Red Corvette, it's more so the song and also Prince's look, as well as that it catered to a white audience. So the song was Little Red Corvette was a very poppy song. And of course, Des Dickerson's wonderful guitar solo. And we see Prince in his shiny purple trench coat, and he's clearly singing a pop song. So Prince's similarity to Michael was looking to garner that crossover appeal, which he would achieve completely with Purple Rain. But it really started with the 1982-1999 album and the videos for Little Red Corvette in 1999. So those were the ways where he tried to kind of, not so much, maybe ignore isn't a good word, but try to avoid issues of race in his music. Now we're going to look at the ways in which he embraced race in his music. Okay, so Prince embraced his race and promoted his black roots. So while he was working on Dirty Mind and the Controversy albums, he started working on 2 side projects that will go on to highlight Prince's black music roots in R&B and funk. And I'm going to focus on one of the 2 groups. One group in particular, The Time, will really work as Prince's black band, quote unquote, so to speak. The band came about over a deal between Prince and Morris Day. As Morris Day describes it, one day when he was hanging out with Prince in his house and they were playing, having a jam session, most likely Prince was playing either the guitar or the bass and Morris was probably playing the drums. Morris started playing a groove to a song that Prince really liked. So he offered to give Morris money for the song, or he could get Morris a record deal and he could start his own band with Prince's help, of course. So Morris took the deal and the song ended up on Prince's Dirty Mind album. It was called Party Up. So Morris took the deal and he found some musicians in Minneapolis that he knew were bad musicians. I mean, they could really play. So he recruited Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, Jelly Bean Johnson, and Monty Moyer, who he knew from the group Flight Time. Jesse Johnson, who was from Illinois but had moved to Minneapolis in 1981 and had joined Morris Day's band called Enterprise, and he knew that, Jesse Johnson was a badass guitarist. So he brought all these men together, plus Morris Day, and they would make up the group The Time. So I'll be talking more about The Time in episode 6, so I'm only going to highlight how the music that Prince wrote for them was written for a black audience. So a lot of the songs from really all of the first, the first 3 albums by the time were a mixture of funk and R&B songs. Songs like Get It Up, Cool, 7779311, Gigolos Get Lonely Too, and later on songs like Jungle Love and The Bird would all signify that Prince was in fact still funky and he still wanted to create black music. So he basically used the time as an outlet for his black music creations. The Time would also appear and perform on television on the television show Soul Train in 1981. Now, Soul Train was a lot like American Bandstand. The only difference was that it catered to black music and to a black audience. So once again, Prince was being strategic in how he presented the Time as a band. Later on, around 1987, when Sign of the Times came out, he wrote the song Adore, which was the last song on the album. And he said that he wrote it for black radio, as he put it, because it was around this time that black R&B was having kind of a golden age. You had artists like Luther Vandross, Anita Baker, and Whitney Houston putting out amazing R&B songs and albums. So Prince was like, hey, I can do that too. And so that's why he wrote Adore. And to this day, if you ask just about any black person what one of their favorite Prince songs is, Adore, 9 times out of 10 will be it. It was a sleeper hit for the black community. So Prince knew how to cater to the black community as well, while also maintaining his more pop rock image with the mainstream or white audience. So he was able to really play both sides of the fence, so to speak. Now, when hip hop started to become popular in the mainstream in the late 1980s, early 90s, Prince would incorporate it into his music and in live performances. Tony Mosley, also known as Tony M, would be a rapper and dancer during the Diamond and Pearls and Love Symbol era. Prince would also rap himself, as well as Rosie Gaines, a backup singer and a keyboardist for the MPG during this era, on several tracks on Diamonds and Pearls and the Love Symbol album. Songs like Pope, Jughead, Push, My Name is Prince. But also just going back a little bit from that, during the Love Sexy album in 1988, dancer Cat Glover would rap on Alphabet Street. And Sheila E. also had a rap she would do on the song It's Gonna Be a Beautiful Night that was on Sign of the Times. So Prince would follow black music trends all the way up to the end of his career in life. He experimented with auto-tune in the Lotus Flower and Artificial Age albums as well. So in his business practices, Prince would hire black managers and lawyers, and he preferred being interviewed by black journalists. He sat down with lots of people like Tavis Smiley and Arsenio Hall. His last manager before his death was a black woman named Phaedra Ellis Limpkins. She was also a social justice advocate. So in April of 2015, a black man named Freddie Gray suddenly died while in police custody in Baltimore, and riots broke out in the city. I know a lot of y'all probably remember that. In response, Prince wrote the song Baltimore that would go on Hit and Run Phase 2, the last album released during his lifetime. He also went to Baltimore and performed at a peace rally. He spoke to the crowd of his support for the Black Lives Matter movement, and that it was up to the current generation to be more socially and economically active in the black communities. He wanted to support black businesses and entrepreneurship. That's why he chose to release his last 2 albums, Hit and Run Phase 1 and Hit and Run Phase 2, on the streaming platform Tidal, because it was owned at the time by rapper Jay-Z. The last few years of his life, Prince also started back wearing his hair natural, his afro, like he did when he first started. So it was like he almost came full circle. You know, the afro has long been a symbol of black pride and black heritage. So these were just some of the ways that Prince would embrace his blackness and his race. Contrary to what some have thought about Prince, he was very proud to be black. He was not a colorist, as some have claimed that he was. He loved black women and he loved black people in general. And just to elaborate a little bit more about this whole colorist thing. So there is a video on YouTube that I didn't even really watch all of it because it just angered me so bad that this black woman was claiming that, you know, Prince was a colorist because of, you know, the women that he dated. Now, I think that people have the right to date who they want. And yes, Prince did have a type. That is true. But I don't think that he should be punished for having a type, or any man for that matter. The only thing that I disagree with is if you talk bad about, like Like if you're a black man, for example, and you like to date only white women, okay, that's your business. That's what you do. But don't talk bad or talk down about black women and saying that's the reason why you're dating white women. That's what I disagree with, and that's just me personally. Sorry, y'all, I'm thirsty. But Prince, as far as I know, he never did that. He did date Nona Gay. That's probably the best known black woman he dated. But he also dated Susan Moosey, who was from Trinidad, and Kim Upshur was a black woman. These are his some of his first two known girlfriends were actually black women. And also, you know, he was very flirty with Tamron Hall a few years before he died. He really liked her. And there's rumors that, you know, he dated Damaris Lewis, which was his black dancer during about 2012, 2013. I mean, so you can't really, I just, and then of course he, you know, he employed black women. He really loved women in general. Now, who he decided to marry and who he decided to date, that's really Prince's business in my opinion. But do I feel like that he, you know, neglected to date black women? No, not at all. I don't. And even if he chose to not date any black women, which is not, you know, the case, but if he chose not to, that's, I mean, to me, you like who you like, you know? And so this whole colors notion, I think the woman, and I hate to say this about her because I really don't know her, but I'm going to just say I think that she was probably hurt by maybe a man that rejected her, and she's just trying to, you know, perpetuate this on, you know, I don't know if it's light-skinned, you know, black men that she has an issue with. I don't know what it is. But I was just really angered by it. And I put a very long post explaining why I did not believe that Prince is a colorist. And I do not believe that he was a colorist. And that's just what it is. You like who you like. You should be able to like and love who you want to date. There's a lot of dark-skinned women that date white men, you know, and I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. You know, you like who like you. That's basically what I'm saying. Like who like you. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in, I think, episode 8 when I talk about his love life. I might touch on it a little bit, but like I said, I really can't judge Prince and his choices of women. I mean, all of the women that he got were absolutely, absolutely beautiful. And we know that he loved beautiful women. And I think that he loved beautiful women in all shades. Okay. So finally, let's briefly discuss the ways in which Prince transcended racial stereotypes and limitations. So in the Spike Lee movie, Do the Right Thing, there's this scene with the white Italian character named Pino. And he's talking to Spike Lee's character about why black men like Magic Johnson, Eddie Murphy, and Prince are not really black to him. And he stumbles as he tries to explain himself. And he says, they're not black. I mean, I know they're black, but they're not really black. They're more than black. It's different. So how did Prince come to be viewed as something other than a black man? Because, I mean, obviously in this movie, you know, this white man is saying, well, Prince he's black, but he's not. I mean, you know, he's different. So how did he get to that point? Well, I believe it's a combination of what we kind of already talked about, his music and his image, and just him really being true to who he was as himself. You know, he's said, you know, numerous times in numerous interviews that I've read and saw on YouTube that, you know, this is all about him trying to be himself, you know, and to be, you know, he's not trying to be something that he's not. You know, this is who he is, you know, and he knew he was black and he was proud to be black. But from the beginning of his career, he always inspired to be more than just that. And I think the one thing that really set him apart from most black artists that may have really cultivated this whole transcendency of race was him changing his name to the love symbol, or the glyph, as it would become known in the 1990s. So Prince and Warner Brothers started in about 1992-93, they started having a very public disagreement about the ownership of his music. Prince felt, rightfully so, that since he created the music, that he should own it. However, that is not how the music industry operated. Warner Brothers owned the music because they paid a majority of the overhead expenses to make the records. And I think that was also part of the reason why after Paisley Park was built in 1987, that Prince started doing the majority of his recording for his albums there. But he was actually doing that even before Paisley Park was built. He was recording in his home, going all the way back to the Dirty Mind album. So, and he said he even stopped taking advances from the record company after Dirty Mind. He didn't take any more advances from the record company. So he could record in his own space, and he wouldn't have the record company to pay for the studio time for him to, do studio time somewhere else. But he would still record, periodically in Los Angeles. His favorite studio in Los Angeles is probably Sunset Sound. And there are 2 books written by Dwayne Tudal, I think that's how you say his last name, that are awesome. I haven't got through the second one with the Parade era studio sessions, but I did read the Purple Rain era studio sessions, and these books are wonderfully detailed. So, but yeah, and they're all about his time at Sunset Sound. But anyway, but even with his recording his albums at Paisley Park, Warner Brothers still felt they owned those songs because they're still the ones distributing the records. So Prince will find very creative and innovative ways for distribution for his music because his output was just not keeping up with what Warner Brothers could promote. So he wanted to find alternative methods for getting his music out to his fans. But I don't want to elaborate on that too much because in a future episode, when we make it to the 90s, I'll discuss more about that. But he was just putting out all this music, and then the record company, they just could not keep up with it. So that was also a good chunk of the dispute there. So he found alternative ways to, get his music out there. He would, sign with one record label for like one album, and then he would find ways to distribute the music online. He was actually one of the first artists to start distributing music online. So he was really innovative in that. So he was really the head of the curve when it came to internet distribution. So anyways, he changed his name to the Love Symbol because he felt like his birth name, Prince, was now a commodity of the record company. So during this time period, when people thought of Prince, they thought of the symbol because that essentially was his name from 1993 until 2000. And he would not answer to the name Prince. So people that worked for him called him sir or boss, or hey you or hey dude. Like they could not call him Prince. Even to the point, Maite, his first wife, when they got married and said their vows, she held up a symbol necklace she had on instead of saying his name. That's how it was. Like, that's how bad it was. So the symbol really encompassed his personality and who he was. And guess what, y'all? Symbols don't have race. Okay, so therefore, the love symbol is a representation of Prince. And he kept that for the remainder of his career and life. And he will be forever connected to that symbol. And even after he started going back by his name Prince after the year 2000, the symbol and Prince would forever be connected. Now, going back to the 1980s, Prince's music and image did not mesh with the typical black R&B artist. Like, I use the word typical kind of loosely, but let's just look at like some R&B artists of the 80s, like Marvin Gaye or Luther Vandross. Like, he did not look or sound anything like them, but he could do music like them. Now, if he wanted to, like, he knew he had, we knew, he has a beautiful, beautiful falsetto, and his chest voice was also great, but he instead chose to stay true to himself and do the type of music that spoke to him as an artist. So, in conclusion, Prince found creative ways to avoid, embrace, and transcend the racial politics of both popular culture and the music industry by just being Prince. Prince's music cannot be put into one genre, nor could his look be copied. He was and is a unique, one-of-a-kind musician that would forever change the face of not only popular music, but the music industry itself. Thank you, Purple family, for listening. Next on Shades of Purple, we'll be discussing Prince's 5 #1 hit songs and his second album, the self-titled Prince. Until then, peace and be wild, and may you live to see the dawn. Bye.